In the last video, you guys saw me rip out this section of fence line bunk feeder that forever we have used to feed small square bales. And today, I'm gonna start construction on my new round bale feeder. That's what's going on today on Farmertylerranch. Right now I've got this blocked off with panels because since tearing down the old one, I've had to bring the cattle up into this area of the ranch and they've needed to come in the corral here to get water. So obviously I can't have a huge hole here, so that's why the panels are there. If you're new to the channel, I feel like I should kind of explain what we're actually doing here. Forever, we fed small square bales at this ranch, and this area behind me was a fence line bunk feeder. We would stack the small bales here where the round bales are now, and then you could just throw the small bales down here into what was once the manger. But now that we've moved to round bales, I need to get something different set up because obviously I'm not going to fit round bales right here. The idea is to make a drive-in feeder that is essentially going to be a bunk feeder, but I'll be able to pull the tractor in and set round bales down so that the cows can get around the bale on all sides and eat. Basically, it's gonna look like this, but in sort of a rectangular shape that I can drive the tractor into. When this is all said and done, it will easily accommodate round bales, but that won't be the only thing that you can put in there, which will be nice in case for just some crazy reason, if I ever have to get square bales for maybe a year or whatever, you just never know what can happen. But this feeder will be able to accommodate both types, or even large square bales. This will be nice because it'll be able to feed anything. All right, I've got plenty of room to work now, and the cows will be able to watch me, but they won't really be able to bother me. And I think on this build, I'm gonna try to share a little bit more of my decision-making process and kind of how I come to decide to do the things that I do to build this, because there's no blueprint here. This is all just sort of on the fly, what's in my head, trying to become reality. And the reason that I want to share that process with you is because I know that a lot of you just watch because you like to see things being built or, you know, whatever. But there might be some people out there watching that also want to build their own things, but maybe don't have the confidence or feel like they don't have the know-how or ability to do it. I would really want to be able to inspire those kinds of people to go ahead and just try to build stuff, because once you do kind of learn how to build things, it opens up the possibilities of all that you can have. I look around here and I see a lot of things that I've built. My corral fences, feeders, my sweep tub, my working alley. I could have never afforded to buy these things, but because I was able to make them, I have them now. So the first decision is how wide to make this. Now there's two things that need to be considered. The first is we want the walls close enough together so that when the cows reach through on either side, they're able to access all or at least most of the hay. The other thing to consider is that it needs to be wide enough to comfortably drive the tractor through there. The way that I've got the old 8N set up here, it's about 6 feet wide on the money. So we definitely want the feeder wider than that. But now it's where we're gonna kind of have a trade-off, because really to make this wide enough to comfortably drive the tractor in, it's gonna be a little bit too wide for the cows to reach all the way across, I think. I'm gonna go with somewhere around 7.5 feet wide. That should give me plenty of room to drive the tractor in. And I think that it's still close enough together that they're gonna be able to reach most of that hay. There will probably be some left on the ground when they're done that they won't be able to reach, but I'm figuring that when I bring the next bales in for the next feeding, I can kind of just set them on the ground and scoot them, and they'll almost act like a broom, and they will push all of that old hay down to the end where there will be feed slots that the cattle will get to. So everything will get eaten at some point, and that actually might be good because it'll slow them down a little bit and they won't over consume on the first day. These little fiberglass poles are gonna kind of show me about where my holes need to be. And then the string is gonna keep everything in line. So now that I've got these 2 dimensions figured out, I can mark my holes and start digging. I keep telling myself that by the time I were to go and get the tractor and hook the digger up and dig these holes with the tractor, that I could have them done by hand, but I'm not really sure that's the case. This ground is hard and I'm tired and it's hot, but now I've only got 1 hole left to do. So now I'm just gonna do it by hand. All right, well, I got my holes dug. In hindsight, I wish that I would have used the tractor, but hey, they're done now, so that's fine. I sunk these holes down about 2.5 feet, and if I was digging them with the tractor, I probably would have gone down more like 3 feet. But because they're gonna be tied in to structure on this side and that side, and then the rest of the feeder is gonna anchor to the concrete slab, these posts aren't actually going to have a lot of stress put on them, and since everything's going to be tied together, there's really no sense in digging those holes deeper.
Oh, mercy.
Heavy. I'm using 4x4 square tubing for these upright posts, and the wall on that's about 3/16, so it's a little bit less than 1/4. These are actually really nice for this application, and if I was buying new material, I probably wouldn't pony up the dough for these, but because I already had them and they're already the right length, and they're even capped on one end already, so that's one less thing that I'm gonna have to do once they're in. These were perfect. What I like about these is that since I'll be butting up round pipe and welding that to them, I won't have to do any coping or notching of the pipe. It's just a straight cut I can do on the chop saw, weld it right up, and I'm all done. Once I have the other post cemented in the ground, the plan is to weld a cross piece connecting the two, and that'll just help strengthen everything up. And because the plan is to drive the tractor in here to set bales down, obviously these posts have to be tall enough so that once that cross pipe is welded in place, I've got enough headroom to drive the tractor in. And then I also have to consider, and I hate even saying it out loud, but you know, I may not always feed here with the 8N. I might end up using another tractor, but I think still this is going to be wide enough and tall enough to accommodate anything else that I might use. All right, well there's that, and I gotta confess, these ended up being a lot closer to 8 feet apart. I think they're like 7 feet 11 inches apart. I was shooting for more like 7 or 7.5 feet, so a little wider than I planned. But the more I started thinking about it, the more I'm okay with that, and actually kind of glad that it turned out this way. See, the big complaint with round bales, and one of the reasons why I really hesitated to switch over to round bales, is everybody talks about the waste. They waste so much when you feed round bales. Well, let's think about why that is. Most of the time when I see people feeding round bales in feeders, they're putting a 6-foot round bale in an 8-foot feeder, and that means that there's only a 1-foot gap all the way around between the bale and the feeder. Well, of course, the cow's not gonna stand there with her head halfway in the feeder and eat. She's gonna reach in, pull out what she wants, pull it out of the feeder and drop it on the ground and eat it. It's not natural for them to stand there with their head in the bars while they're chewing. If I've got a bigger gap in between the feeder and the bales, then the cows, I think, will be more likely to stand with their heads in the feeders while they chew, and therefore whatever they drop, they'll just reach down and pick up and eat rather than step on and, you know, grind it down into the mud. With an 8-foot gap in between these feed panels and feeding 4-foot diameter bales, that means the cows have 2 feet of head space that they can just leave their head there while they chew. Now, to kind of figure out how much hay they wouldn't be able to reach by doing this, I took some measurements on my old bunk feeder, and the way Grandpa built this one, it was about 40 inches from the bunk feeder itself to the other side of the trough. And I know from years of experience, they're able to reach all of that hay, so I can assume pretty safely that they can reach out 40 inches from the bunk feeder itself. What that means is that I have about 16 inches in the middle here that they potentially won't be able to reach, although I think they will, because if you've ever seen a cow's tongue, they can stick that tongue out about 12 inches beyond their mouth. And I don't think there's going to be very much here left behind. If there is, then like I was saying before, I can use the bale in the next feeding to sort of just push all that to the end, and then, you know, they'll be able to reach it down there. So the next step here is to weld the cross piece in and then weld these short pipes in to connect the new post to the old post. But I don't want to do that quite yet. I want to let the concrete set up for a few hours at least. And I'm hoping that maybe by this afternoon I can come back and get some of the welding done. It's been a few hours since I set these posts in concrete, and the concrete's definitely not completely cured yet, but it's cured enough to where I can start welding on it. Now, it's really hot this afternoon. It's over 100 today. I think my truck said it was like 108. So yeah, we're feeling it. But I want to get this cross piece welded in. That's my main goal for today. If that's all I get done, then at least I got that done. But because it is so hot and dry out here, I'm really concerned about fire. So I've got a sprinkler going in the background. I don't know if you can hear it, but the wind, well, we really don't have any wind today, but there's a gentle breeze that's kind of blowing this way. So I've got my sprinkler going over here in case any rogue sparks happen to find their way this direction. They're going to be met with, you know, wet ground, and hopefully it won't be an issue. When I measure for these cross pipes, I always measure it towards the bottom of the posts, and then that way if I get the pipe up there and it's too long or too short, then I can just pull the posts together or spread them apart to make it fit. And the reason that I do that is because then, now that I say it out loud, it's kind of like a really OCD thing, I guess. But if I measure the pipe at the bottom and I weld it in at the top, then I know that the top width and the bottom width are exactly the same. So like in this case, apparently my posts were a little bit out of square because I've got about a 1/4 inch gap on this side, which is no big deal. I've just got the hoist and a strap rigged up here. I'm just gonna pull these posts together and then weld it, and then I'll know that these are perfectly square. Hey, you can't be a good craftsman without being a little OCD, right? Well, there you have it. It's nothing too fancy, but you know, honestly, this being just right, or just how I want it, is extremely critical for the outcome of the rest of the feeder. So while this may not look like much, it's actually pretty important to the rest of this project. And I know I keep saying it, but it is hot. And when you start sweating so much that it runs down in your eyes and you can't really see what you're doing, I think that's when it's time to call it quits and head on home. In the next installment on this project, my goal is to get these little gaps on either side of the posts filled in. Once that part's all finished, then I'll be able to start welding to these posts the pieces that will come out and eventually make the feeder. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys, and I hope I'll see you again on Farmer Tyler Ranch.